Raiders put on the pads for the first time during training camp today. How much will that help the offense, and in particular the quarterbacks, get on track? That plus a whole lot more on Tuesday's edition of the Locked On Raiders podcast for July 30th, 2024.
You are Locked On Raiders, your daily Las Vegas Raiders podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
And welcome, Raider Nation, to another edition of the Locked On Raiders podcast. Thank you so much for making the show your first listen of the day. Make sure you subscribe or follow for free on YouTube or wherever you get your podcasts. To get the latest edition of the show as soon as it becomes available, as always, if you're giving us a look on YouTube, we appreciate that. The show grows each and every day, and that's because of your support. And, of course, because of my man, Ari, who does a great job each and every day getting us on YouTube, making sure we're looking good, we're sounding good. We definitely shout him out, and we appreciate him. You can check him out on Twitter at Ari Produces. You can hit me up as well at your boy Q254. And we got the Locked On Raider podcast voicemail line at 707-654-4693. Of course, as always, your calls and texts are coming up in segment number 3. We'll get as much feedback in as possible. Obviously, a lot of reaction to the first 4 days of Raiders training camp. That all come up in segment number 3. Segment number 2, we'll talk about the pads going on, how that can make a difference for the offense, how that can make a difference for the offensive line, the running backs, how all of it can really come together and really start to show what this Raiders offense could particularly look like. And maybe it can even help Gardner Minshew or Aiden O'Connell or Gardner Minshew take the lead in this quarterback competition. We'll do that coming up in segment number 2 of today's Locked On Raiders podcast. Here in segment number 1, news and notes of the day, including a Raiders roster move that was made on Monday. We'll jump right into that after I tell you about the title sponsor of this show, which is FanDuel. Make every moment more. Sports, they're not really sporting like they used to, with a lot of different sports being done for the year, like the NBA and NHL. But of course, Major League Baseball is, gearing up for the postseason. Trade deadline is today. So that's still going on. The Olympics are going on, and FanDuel is going on. They're hooking up all customers with a boost or a bonus daily. That's right. Something for everyone every day, all summer long. Visit FanDuel.com to get started today. So off top, want to let you know about a Raiders roster move that was made following practice on Monday. The Raiders signed free agent wide receiver Terrell Bynum. He was recently with the Colts after signing as an undrafted free agent with the Chargers back in 2023, and he spent last season on the Chargers practice squad, and he saw action in one regular season game. Now, I'll stop right there. A lot of people got up in arms when the last staff went and signed a lot of people, a lot of free agents, or brought guys in that were from the Patriot tree. Well, here goes Tom Telesco from the Chargers tree. Obviously he spent 11 seasons there as a Chargers GM, and you see he's bringing in guys that have ties with the Chargers. So brought in Keelan Doss last week. Obviously, he's the Alameda kid. He's the guy that's got ties with the Raiders going back to 2019 Hard Knocks, but he also was with the Chargers last year. So now they signed Terrell Bynum, who spent last season on the Chargers practice squad. So just get used to Tom Telesco signing guys that he's very familiar with, which are mainly going to be Chargers guys. Bynum finished his college career at USC, played in 10 games, and had 16 catches for 159 yards and 1 touchdown back in 2022. So he's another wide receiver that's been added to the mix. Of course, Michael Gallup retired. Guyton is still on the PUP list, and so they're making a few moves here and there, and that's what you're going to see throughout the course of training camp. You're going to see guys come in. You're going to see guys get a little bit of burn, maybe a couple days of practice. Then they might not work, and then boom, they're going to let them go. Or in some cases, guys that are on the PUP list are going to get removed from the PUP list, and then that roster spot will be opened up. So in this case, a corresponding transaction, the Raiders waived Darian Butler, the linebacker who was on the PUP list. He failed the physical. He's a guy that had suffered a pretty bad knee injury and was just never able to bounce back from that. So Terrell Bynum in, Darian Butler out, and there'll probably be a lot more moving and shaking before it's all said and done. But that was the official Raiders roster move that was made on Monday. Still no JPJ. He did not return to practice yet. I don't know if he's going to return today on the first day of pads. I would be really shocked to see him, but I was really hoping to see number 70 out there on Monday, but it did not happen. So we'll see. I mean, every day I go out to practice, we'll see if he shows up. But again, GM Tom Telesco said he's a guy that he doesn't expect to be out very long, so that's positive. But what does that mean? Does that mean this week? Does that mean next week? Does it mean today? What's the case may be, he's just missing valuable time. He needs to get a little bit of burn with those guys on the offensive line and get acclimated to what the NFL is like. Again, today, the pads go on. So before practice on Monday, we had an opportunity to catch up to Luke Getsy. After practice, we talked to Jacorian Bennett, Nate Hobbs, was able to talk to Michael Mayer and also Brock Bowers. But before practice, we got to talk to offensive coordinator Luke Getsy, and I just wanted to bring a couple sounds from him from Monday since the offense still has not got on track. And Monday's training camp practice was more of, it wasn't as intense as Friday. Friday was pretty intense, pretty physical for not having pads on. You could see it was really getting ramped up. It looked like it was dialed back a little bit on Monday where they knew, hey, on Tuesday the pads are going to go on, so we want to make sure we have fresh legs. I even heard special teams coordinator Tom McMahon say multiple times while they were doing special teams drill, hey, run 5 yards and then shut it on down. Make sure you save your legs. But wanted you to hear from offensive coordinator. Just got a couple sound bites from him, from Luke Getsy. And the first one is just on how the quarterbacks will take charge during camp and practice, really kind of what they've done from the offseason, OTAs, and all that, what they were doing on their own to where they're at right now. Here's Luke Getsy talking about the quarterbacks and what they've done so far up to this point.
Well, tomorrow starts pads, right? And so I think that the speed of the game just naturally picks up, and I think that's part of it. They both did an outstanding job of taking that off season to learn it, take the little break, let it digest, and then they both have been hitting it running right now really well. Their command, their control of everything is so much better, and I think everybody around them feels that.
So, he's saying all the right things. He's pretty pleased with, the work that they've put in, and again, it's kind of a ramp-up period, but happy with what they did in the summer during OTAs, and now he likes what they bring to the table. But again, with all that being said, still nobody has separated in that quarterback competition. Nobody's really just had a day where I walked away and said, wow, Aiden O'Connell just owned that day, or Gardner Minshew owned that day. It's been a lot of good and bad throughout the course of the 4 practices that the Raiders have officially under their belts. Today is going to be a really good day for the running backs. They get to put their pads on, right? So you start to get an idea of what Zamir White, what Alexander Madison, what Dylan Lobby, right? What some of these other guys can do. Britton Brown, who actually looked pretty good, who's ended a couple seasons now on IR. He looked pretty good on Monday. But again, with no pads, it's hard to see how good the running backs really are. But here's Luke Getsy, Raiders offensive coordinator, on Zamir White and the other running backs in that room.
They've been great, right? You got 2 vets that have been in the system, and things kind of come natural to them. Z's first time in the system, picking it up better every single day. When he gets that rock, there's a cool explosiveness that I can't wait to see of him as we get the pads on. And then Dylan's doing a great job too. I mean, he's someone to be that young and to be able to pick up things with not as many reps as some of the other guys, and it's just, comes natural to them. So I'm excited. It's a really cool group.
Zamir White's got a big opportunity in front of him, right? I think that he's definitely going to be able to do the job. I know that Antonio Pierce is estimating about 250 carries for Zamir White if he's able to carry the load start to finish. And, of course, Alexander Madison will play a role as well as being a guy who, takes some carries away from him. So if Zamir is getting 250, maybe Madison's getting 150, right? I mean, ideally, we know AP is going to want to run the ball, have a heavy dose of the run game. So it's going to be running back by committee, but Zamir White will definitely be RB1 as long as he's out there and he's healthy. Final soundbite that I want you to hear before we get to segment number 2 of today's Locked On Raiders podcast and start talking about the pads going on today and what I'll be looking for and what that means for the team in general is about getting better. The offense getting better versus the Raiders defense. That's one of the things that has stood out to me about the 4 practices. Like, the defense has looked really good, and I think, okay, the Raiders defense is really good. So it's going to be hard for the offense to have good days. But then I also wonder, like, okay, well, how much is the Raiders offense not looking good, making the defense look even better, right? It's kind of like a fine line, and I don't want to get too high on, okay, the defense is just lights out, it's incredible, and not look at the offense and say, yeah, maybe they're not quite where they need to be just yet. So here's Luke Getsy talking about getting better versus one of the better defenses in the league, the Raiders defense.
That's the whole key to this thing, right? You're going through a process, and when you call a play, there's an expectation of a play. And when you're going through installations, you're not necessarily scheming up the play to defeat whatever exact thing you're expecting to get. But at the same time, you get really cool challenges within the play. And when guys are able to respond within a play that's not maybe perfect for that particular front or particular shell, and they're progressing it, or they're going through it, or making great decisions within it, and maybe, it's not the greatest opportunity for the explosive, but now we went and found a completion instead, or the back, this wasn't the exact front that we wanted, but you went and got 4 instead of having a negative run. All that stuff gives you the confidence to be able to call those types of things, and not kind of have like this reservation of like, oh, what's going to happen? And you start building confidence in those things, because it's not always, you don't always want to have the premier look, right? Yes, that's the ideal for, a play caller to have the premier look, but when these guys can perform the play when it's not the premier look, now you're really cooking.
I do think that it will help them going up against that defense each and every day, because those dudes are not backing down. Those dudes, I say it all the time, are bloodthirsty pirates, and they're looking for blood. I mean, that's exactly what they're doing. Max Crosby has been living in the backfield. The whole defensive line has been living in the backfield. The defense in general, the secondary is flying around. I talked about them quite a bit on Monday. There's just a swagger about this Raiders defense right now. And so maybe it'll change a little bit today. Now, the pads going to come on, as the offense has been chirping a little bit, saying, yeah, wait till we get our pads on, and then we'll see, what's up. So maybe that will change a little bit. But whatever the case may be, we'll talk about the pads going on today, what I'll be looking for, and how that could change the game for the Raiders offense. Coming up in segment number 2, we'll do that, matter of fact, next here on the Locked On Raiders podcast. We'll get into that after I tell you about the title sponsor of the show, which is FanDuel. And we all know I love sports. I love them so much that I never want them to stop. Watching sports all day, even when I really don't have cable, right? I'm in the Airbnb in Costa Mesa and only have a couple channels on the TV, and have a couple streaming channels, but really only have a couple channels. And so anytime I can find a channel that has some kind of sports on, I just stay there. We know that there's not as many sports on as usual, just because different sports have ended. It's that type of year. But the good thing is the Olympics are here, so I do get my fill of sports, probably sports that I would never even watch at some stage of the game. But that's where FanDuel kicks in. It lets me keep sports going whenever I want. All I got to do is open up the app and dream up any bet I want anytime I'm in the mood. This summer, FanDuel is hooking up all customers with a boost or a bonus daily. That's right. There's something for everyone every day, all summer long. Head over to FanDuel.com and start making the most of your summer. FanDuel, the official sports betting partner of Major League Baseball. All right, Raider Nation, here we go. Segment number 2 of today's Locked On Raiders podcast. Today is a fun day. Today is a day when, as I mentioned on that Friday, it felt like camp was really here. It was really the first day of training camp, as Wednesday and Thursday really felt like kind of ramp-up periods and glorified OTAs, and Friday really felt like it was training camp. It felt like the offense was going up against the defense. There was some chirping going on. There was some physicality going on, and it was about as physical as it could be without having pads on. Well, today, the pads go on. Hercules, right? It's something to celebrate, because that's what football is all about. Every player that's out there wants to be physical. It doesn't matter if you're on the offensive side of things, you're on the defensive side of things. You want physicality. That's what football is all about. So you're going to start to learn something. I believe we'll start to learn something about this team today with the pads on. You could always see, and it's funny, every single training camp that I've been a part of, and granted, I've only been a part of a handful of training camps when it comes to the silver and black, there's always players that play really well before the pads go on. But once the pads go on, you see them start to, just kind of fade away, right? It's not quite the same. And then there's some guys that aren't so good when the pads aren't on. And then when the pads are on, you see the difference, man. You see what that physicality brings to their game. So I want to see, first and foremost, who's really going to embrace the physicality, who's going to step up with the physicality, and is there going to be anybody that's fading? Right now, the defense looks great. I've sing the praises of Jacorian Bennett and how good he's looked as a second-year corner out of Maryland. I think that that's going to continue to go and be at a high level. As a matter of fact, he mentioned that on Monday when he met with us following practice. He was saying that the offense was talking about, well, when the pads come on, we'll show you what time it is. And he's like, I think that's going to benefit us even more. I mean, he's playing with a lot of confidence. He's playing with a lot of swagger right now, and he's chomping at the bits to get those pads on. But with the pads going on, I mentioned it on Monday's show, this is really running backs and offensive line. It's their opportunity to do what they do. Right, the defensive line has been able to pin their ears back and get after the quarterback, and Max Crosby's been just wrecking shop and living in the backfield and tagging Gardner, tagging Aiden O'Connell. Now the offensive line gets to get a little pushback. Right, with the pads on, they get to get some pushback. They're not really at the mercy of the defensive line like it was. And yes, the defensive line has pads on too, but it's just different, right? The offensive line can start to put in work when you have pads on. And then, of course, you have running backs that have pads on as well. So blitz pickups, they're going to be able to do that. So I just think that we're going to start to really see what it looks like with this Raiders team when it comes to pads on and physicality. And that's one thing I expect from this camp a lot. I mentioned Friday felt like it was the most physical it could be without having pads on. I think this training camp and period in general is going to be super physical. I really do anticipate it being about as physical as it can get. Obviously, nobody's out there trying to hurt each other. They need each other to get to the regular season healthy, but I think Antonio Pierce really wants to put an emphasis on physicality, right? You want to be smart about the physicality, but I just think that you're going to see some things today. I would not be shocked at all to see a couple fights today either, right? And again, not out there trying to hurt anyone, not trying to be dirty about anything, but these guys, they're pretty amped up, especially the defense, man. They're going by the way of their leader, which is Max Crosby. After every play that he makes, he lets them know about it. So I'm sure at some point he's going to get a little under someone's skin, and someone's going to, want to do a little pushback or talking back, and it may cause some things. So again, when I say a fight, I don't mean a fight like some wild fisticuffs. I mean just, pushing and shoving, maybe a little tackling or whatever, but just to kind of let someone know that, hey, by the way, I'm here. So I anticipate this camp being very, very physical. I was talking to Vinny Bonsignore, and he was actually doing the morning tailgate with Myra Gomez on Monday, and he was asking about the physicality, and he said, I don't think we'll see too much tackling to the ground. I do. I think there's going to be a lot of tackling to the ground. I really do. And I realize that you're setting, your players up sometimes for failure when they're in that. But I think that Antonio Pierce is going to want these players to be as calloused up as possible and be ready to go for the regular season. Like we see so many times that teams get into the regular season. It's like the first 4 weeks of the season, they're working on, their technique. They're working on tackling. They're working on what they really didn't work on, the physicality part of it that much in training camp. So I think Antonio Pierce is going to want to start fast, and part of starting fast is to be ready to go, like in midseason form when it comes to defense, tackling, physicality at the point of attack, the offensive line pushing back on the defensive line pushing back on the offense. I think you're going to see a whole lot of that, and this camp is going to get really physical to the point where AP has told us that there's days that the Raiders are going to be scheduled to have pads on, that he's going to say, yeah, we've been getting some good work in. Let's go ahead and save your bodies. So that's another reason why I anticipate this camp being very, very physical. But I want to see the offensive line and the offense in general really start to step up. Right now that pads are on, and the offensive line can provide a little bit of protection for the quarterbacks. This is when Aiden O'Connell's got to be able to understand the protection, right? Understand how much time he has to get rid of the ball and deliver some dimes. I mean, he's got the stronger, more accurate arm, but, if he doesn't have time to deliver the ball, then it's not going to do him a whole lot of good. And he's not the guy that's going to scramble around and pick up some big yards. He's just not. There's a couple times that he's moved around and, got himself into the end zone, but it was like 2 or 3 yards out. And, I don't know how legit it was. I mean, it was something where, you probably could look back and say, yeah, it probably would have been a sack before he made it into the end zone. But okay, right, at least you could see that he tried a little bit. But I think with the offensive line being able now to provide a little bit of protection, he should have an opportunity to show what he can really do. And Gardner Minshew for the same thing, right? I mean, on Monday, he did a lot of scrambling. He did a lot of backpedaling. He did a lot of backyard football where he was trying to, zig and zag and duke Max Crosby out of his shorts and everything and juke him and everything. And it just didn't happen, right? It wasn't happening. It didn't look. It just didn't look like it was going to go too smoothly. It looked pretty disjointed. So again, I think just with everyone feeling like football with their pads on, it's going to make a whole lot of a difference. Now, I mentioned guys that they look really good without the pads on, and then maybe they start to taper off. Ja'Cory Bennett's been having a fantastic training camp. He really has. I want to see that continue to grow, right? I think it will. Nate Hobbs had a hell of a day on Monday. He was all over the field. Jack Jones has continued to be Jack Jones. But this is where these guys get the opportunity to shine, especially JB and Nate Hobbs. Those guys are a little bit bigger. Jack Jones is not the biggest dude out there. So even though he doesn't shy away from physicality, I really want to see Nate Hobbs and JB get after it and see what they're able to do. And in particular, JB, again, because I just think that he's had such a really good camp. I think he's showing that he should be the cornerback across from Jack Jones. And why? He said he didn't lose any confidence last year. He just, he knows what he can do. He's got kind of a quiet confidence about himself, which is a good thing. Again, I think that he lost a little bit of confidence last year because of different reasons, from injury to just, a rookie being thrown into the fire, going up against really good wide receivers each day. I mean, there's a lot of things that contribute to it, but again, he's been really good so far. So expecting to see some good things from him. And as he mentioned, the offense has been chirping about when the pads come on, what they're going to do. So I think that him, the secondary, the defense, I think they're all going to be ready for that and see what that offense can do. But again, with that being said, this could be the time when the offense looks a lot better and the quarterbacks look a lot better. And there's times when they can hit, Jacoby Myers, they can hit Devontae Adams, they can hit Trey Tucker with the deep shot, or, Michael Mayer and Brock Bowers, who they're definitely going to make sure that they continue to get them involved in. You want to talk about physicality? Brock Bowers loves physicality. The tight ends in general. Michael Mayer, he's more of the traditional tight end where he's really the kind of the blocker, the big physical blocker who was, baptized by Max Crosby last year in training camp when the pads came on and really welcomed him to the league, but it made him a better player, right? I mean, he got back up. He didn't blink. He just, hey, okay, that was Max Crosby. Cool. All right, here I go. Now let me get ready and get back into the mix. And so that's what he did. But Bowers coming from Georgia, coming from the SEC, they're obviously very physical there. He's looking forward to it. As he spoke to us on Monday, was saying that he was excited. Hey, football's about physicality. Can't wait to do that, because right now, again, they're doing everything they could without any pads on, so they're not really protecting themselves. They're doing the best that they can, just out there. It's almost like a glorified 7-on-7. I mean, it's just it's trying to protect them. It's trying to get them in a rhythm, trying to get them on the same page, but by taking the physicality out. Now today, the physicality goes on. So the pads hopefully will make a difference. I'm hoping to come back to the show tomorrow and say, yeah, this quarterback or that quarterback looked really good. They did some good things, and you're starting to see how the offense is starting to come together. Those are things that I hope to see. I know that I will be talking about the running game, because the running backs will be such a bigger factor today and any day that they have pads on as opposed to any other day in training camp. So that's really going to be a point of emphasis. We'll see what the offensive line looks like. We'll see if, Max Crosby and Tyree Wilson and Malcolm Kuntz and Christian Wilkins and, Byron Young, who's been taking the place of Jenkins, John Jenkins out there. He's actually been doing pretty good. So the third-round pick out of Alabama from a year ago is actually stepping up and playing a role while John Jenkins is out. So that, I think, is some positivity as well, since he didn't get very much burn, if any, in his rookie year. So you're starting to see Byron Young, the third-round pick out of Alabama, getting some burn in training camp, at least early on. But again, today, you'll start to separate the boys from the men, right? Who's going to be the strongest at the point of attack? The low man wins. Who's going to get the lowest? Who's going to be the one to stand up and be the strongest? Who can run the ball when everyone knows that you want to run the rock, right? Can Zamir White bust through some of those holes? Can he break off some pretty good runs? Can the offensive line put a hole there for him? Like, that's all questions that will be answered today while the pads are going on. This is a big day for the Raiders in training camp. Again, the offense has not looked great at all. I would not tell you that. They looked okay at best, and they need a shot in the arm. They need a little bit of a boost, and one of these quarterbacks needs to step up and say, hey, I'm the guy, by the way. I'm your starting quarterback. None of that has happened as of yet. It could potentially happen today when the pads go on. We'll be talking to Antonio Pierce before practice around 9:20, 9:30 Pacific time, and then practice starts at 10 o'clock, and that's when it all starts to go down. So if you're following me on Twitter, at your boy Q254, I'll tweet out as many videos as possible, pictures as possible ahead of practice during our window that we can shoot pictures and tweet stuff. And then after that, shut it on down and just sit back and watch. And of course, we'll be here talking about it here on the Locked On Raiders podcast for Wednesday's show. But what's on your mind? 707-654-4693. Your calls and texts are coming up next on today's edition of the Locked On Raiders podcast. We'll get to that after I tell you about Gametime. Gametime is an authorized ticket marketplace in Major League Baseball. It makes getting tickets faster and easier. Prices on Gametime, they actually go down the closer it gets to the first pitch. Great last-minute deals, all-in prices, views from your seat, and their lowest price guarantee. Gametime takes the guesswork out of buying Major League Baseball tickets. I mentioned it the other day that Paul Gutierrez and Adam Hill, they actually went to the Angels-A's game here in Southern California and got tickets for like $6 and had great seats there at the Angels game to watch the Angels and the A's. And how do they do it? By Gametime. And the closer it gets to the start of the game, well, the cheaper that the tickets get. And so obviously the Angels and A's are not the hottest ticket in town anyway, but they were able to get really good deals. But it's not just on baseball or just on sporting events. You can get tickets to anything, concerts, comedy, theater, whatever the case may be. And still, they got the last-minute deals, 60% off buying last-minute seats. They got the zone deals. They got the flash deals. You can see the actual view from your seat before you buy them. So you want to know what it looks like before you get there? Yeah, Gametime is going to help you do that. Right now, what you need to do is take the guesswork out of buying Major League Baseball tickets with Gametime. Download the app, create an account, use promo code LOCKEDONNFL for $20 off your first purchase. Terms do apply. Again, create the account, use the promo code LOCKEDONNFL. That's LOCKEDONNFL for $20 off. Download Gametime today. Last minute tickets, lowest price guaranteed. Here we go, Raider Nation. Segment number 3 of today's Locked On Raiders podcast. Your calls and texts off that Locked On Raider podcast voicemail line, 707-654-4693. Let's start things off with Heavy D in Buffalo. He's actually calling to ask about a player that's no longer on the Raiders but was a very high draft pick, and then a follow-up about a current player as well. Here he is, Heavy D in Buffalo.
Q, hey, this is your man Heavy D calling from Bills country here south of Buffalo. Hey, you're our man on the inside. You are our eyes and ears on the ground. You're there at training camp. So I was hoping you might be game today for a little Q&A. I have a question. It's going to go back a couple of years, and then I have a question and a request. So a couple of years ago, you were at camp and you saw Alex Leatherwood, and you said he was going to get cut. That was your prediction. And I thought to myself, Q, you've lost it. There's no way they're going to cut a first-round pick. He was a reach, but he was considered a really good second-round pick and a great tackle from Alabama. Everything I read said they thought he could at least slide inside and be a good guard. And you talked about his body language. You just talked about what you were seeing, and damn if you weren't right. So I know this is going back like 2 years. This is an old throwback question. What did you see? The unfiltered story. Like, what did you see from Alex Leatherwood? Because he flamed out of football. I don't know if the man just doesn't love football. I don't know if he just didn't have the drive, the passion. I don't know if he was the Jamarcus Russell of offensive linemen. But so what did you see back then? And then also, I was just wondering if there's a young guy, like first or second year player, that you've seen that concerns you now. Maybe not that level, but that you want to see some more fire in his belly, or conversely, if there's a first or second year guy who you just see out there who's just bringing all kinds of enthusiasm and love for the game. So you're there to see all the nonverbals and stuff like that, and you're hearing the coaches talk. So I'm just wondering what you're seeing. If there's a first or second year guy that troubles you a little bit, that maybe they don't have that fire, or somebody who's super fired up. And then also, I was wondering if you could just share a story about Alex Leatherwood and what you saw and how this man flamed out of football. Hey, love the show. Raider Nation, have a great day.
Heavy D, thanks so much for the call. I appreciate you. As far as the back end of your question, Jack Jones, Nate Hobbs, JB, as I mentioned, Ja'Cory Bennett, those guys are all super fired up for good reason, right? They're flying around, they're making plays, but the secondary, those dudes are really active. And since JB is a second-year guy, I'll go with him. Ja'Cory Bennett, he's a guy that I'm going to be focusing on a lot today with the pads going on. Really want to focus in on him and see just how he continues to grow, because he could be the future. Like Brandon Faison could be right now as a veteran, but he's a little bit older, right? 1 year deal. I could see Ja'Cory Bennett really being successful. Like, he's a 4th-round pick, only going into year 2 of his deal. He can grow with this team, grow with this defense, grow with the defensive coordinator, grow with the coaching staff. He can do that for a while. So that's the guy that I'm really paying attention to for that reason as well. As far as guys that, I identify as guys that may not cut it, I haven't done that yet because the pads haven't gone on. I mentioned that in segment number 2. When the pads go on is when you start to see the guys that are good football players when there are no pads, like good 7-on-7, 11-on-11 players, but not necessarily good football players, if you know what I mean, right? So I haven't identified that guy yet, but give me a week or two, and I'll let you know, or maybe it will take less than that. Maybe I'll come back tomorrow and say, hey, this is what I noticed. This guy right here stood out to me in a major way. As soon as I see him, I'll identify him, just like I did with Alex Leatherwood. What happened with Alex Leatherwood, obviously we all know he was struggling, right? We knew that he was not doing good. He was a reach when they drafted him, number 17 overall. We knew that. Christian Darrisaw was a guy that they probably should have drafted. The Vikings just gave him a contract extension. But in particular, what happened is a day at practice, and Chandler Jones was going up against Alex Leatherwood, and we were on the far field there at the Raiders facility. And, man, Chandler Jones came screaming around the corner and went right around Alex Leatherwood, and I swear that I saw, like Alex Leatherwood's, like, soul leave his body. I'm telling you, just standing there, it looked like I just saw a soul levitate out of his body and over to the sideline. Alex Leatherwood took a knee. He did a little bit of a circle. He walked over to the sideline, took another knee, walked back, got behind the quarterback, took another knee. Like, you could just see, like, you know when you're really confused or you're really just kind of zoned out or you don't really know what happened. That was Alex Leatherwood at that moment, and that's when I came back to the radio station. I was like, I just saw Alex Leatherwood's soul leave him, and that was Chandler Jones', I guess, finest moment as a Raider, and it wasn't fine because he just he took out Alex Leatherwood, and again, it wasn't intentionally. He was trying to make him better and doing what he does, but it just Leatherwood was done after that. I don't know the reason why Leatherwood wasn't good. He just seemed like he was slow. Every movement he made did not seem like he was ready to be that starting right tackle. He just kind of, like I said, everything kind of seemed like he was just going through the motions, and it was unfortunate, right? And I say that it was the best thing that Chandler Jones did. I mean, obviously he had to play against the Patriots in the end zone. That was fantastic. Had a game or two where he got multiple sacks. That's cool. But for the most part, like, the most impactful play he made, as far as I'm concerned, was when he took the soul of Alex Leatherwood. I still remember that practice like it was yesterday. But thanks so much for that. I do appreciate you. Up next, got a text from Grim Raider in Virginia. Hey, Q, just got done listening to your podcast from Monday and heard Army Raider's statement, in which I agree with in regards to staying quiet and get it done. However, I'm a huge Muhammad Ali fan, and that man was anything and everything but quiet. He talked the talk, but he sure backed it up at some. If that's what the Raiders are going to do, that's fine by me, is all I'm saying. Talk and back it up. Just win, baby. That's Grim Raider in Virginia, and thanks so much. I do appreciate you. And look, this is the deal. This is who this team is, right? I mean, they're going to take on the identity of their head coach. They're going to be who they're going to be, right? The dudes that are in that locker room, they're going to chirp. And I'll say this. There's people in life that can chirp, that can talk, and that can back it up, right? And then there's certain people that they chirp, and that's all they can do, right? Like, for me particular, I'm really good at talking trash and being able to do my job at a high level. Like, I've mastered that, right? Even when I was playing basketball, like, I was one of those guys, the more I got to talk trash to you, the more that I played even better, right? And not everyone is able to do that, right? It's just, it's a really good skill set. Some people, they get so focused on talking trash, they can't do their job at the same time. But like, that kind of stuff pushes me and motivates me. I feel like the Raiders have a lot of dudes in that locker room just like that. Like, Jack Jones is a very emotional dude. Nate Hobbs, he rides emotions as well, right? He's got that swagger to him. Jacorian Bennett, I mean, if you heard him talking to the media on Monday, you could hear even more confidence and a little bit more swag in his voice as well. Like, he's, hey, we out there doing what we do, right? And of course, when you're a really good defense or a really good player in general, it's easier to have those kind of moments. But yeah, like I said, everyone is going to be different. I think that this unit is a team that's going to talk trash. They're going to say that they're angry. They're going to let it be known. They're going to put it on wax, like my guy Emmett Golden would say. But at the same time, I think that they'll be able to back it up because, again, they go as their head coach goes. And as long as their head coach says, hey, it's not too far, guys, you guys are channeling it and doing it the right way, I think they'll be fine. Just like he said, they'll be fine come to game day. So, Grim Raider, thanks so much for the text. I do appreciate you. Up next, got a call from Big Drew in H-Town in Houston. He's calling to talk about the concern for the Raiders offense and also has a question about Max Crosby introducing the young guys to the NFL. Here he is, Big Drew in Houston.
Yo, what up, Q? This is Big Drew calling out of Houston. Just a real quick call. Just want to mention that all of these reports coming out about the offense and, more importantly, the quarterback has me a little worried. I wasn't a big fan of the Luke Getsy signing, and obviously it's super early in camp. And I know I don't sound like it, but I am optimistic. It's just a little concerning that there really hasn't been any separation made from either of the quarterbacks, or not a big separation made. And also that the defense is dominating. I know our defense is going to be really good, but yeah, you want to hear some more good news from the offense just as a fan. Anyway, also, one question that I have to ask that I feel is a pretty interesting question is, last year, Max Crosby, quote-unquote, baptized Michael Mayer. And I'm curious to know, with the Pats coming on tomorrow, being Tuesday, Curious to know if that's going to happen to Brock. I'm sure it will, or I'm sure Max is going to attempt it. But my question is, do you think that could possibly be detrimental to a young player's confidence? I remember a few years ago or a couple years ago, you brought up how Leatherwood, I can't remember who it was, I think it was Chandler Jones, kind of beat him pretty bad on a rep or something like that. I don't remember the exact story, but beat him pretty bad. And you said that he put his head down, and you knew right then and there that he was kind of not done with football, but extremely discouraged. So do you think that in a young player's career, getting beat up that bad, I know it's iron sharpens iron, but do you think that's possibly detrimental to a young player's career? Chances are it won't be, but I mean, I do think it's possible. Anyway, just want to know your thoughts on that. Anyway, that's all I got for you, Q. Appreciate everything that you do. Big Drew out. Peace.
Thanks for the call, Big Drew. Appreciate you. And what is this, the Alex Leatherwood day? Reminiscing on Alex Leatherwood? Man, yeah, just like I mentioned earlier, Chandler Jones got him. I don't think Max Crosby introducing Michael Mayer to the league the way he did last year. I mean, we all talked about it. Hell, even at the time, head coach Josh McDaniels talked about it. But Michael Mayer got up. He never held his head down, right, and realized, okay, that's Max Crosby. But he got right back in the huddle, kept fighting, and he started to come along in his rookie year. And then, of course, the toe injury sidelined him the rest of the season. But, I mean, he was ready to go. And he wasn't even having fun last year for one reason or the other. This year he's having fun. He looks like he's bigger. He's healthier. He's a veteran now at this point. He knows the ropes. He knows what to expect. So, yeah, if Max Crosby has his way with Brock Bowers and all of a sudden introduces him to the league, I think he's got the mental makeup where he'll be just fine. And honestly, that's part of Alex Leatherwood's issue as well. He, in my opinion, just didn't have the mental makeup to be able to deal with adversity that well. Like, he was at Alabama, and Alabama, the whole offensive line was really good. So it can kind of disguise some of the issues that Alex Leatherwood might have had, and where he may have struggled in certain areas, other guys are able to make up for it. And, oh, by the way, you're not going up against an NFL player each and every day, even though the SEC is tough, as we know that every team ain't an NFL team. So that's something that I think that Brock Bowers has the mental makeup, just like Michael Mayer has that mental makeup. So I think they'll be just fine. So thanks so much for that call. I do appreciate you. Got a text from AAA Raider in the 619. It says, hey, Q, what's up, Raider Nation? Just a quick thought on the whole Raiders in Los Angeles and Costa Mesa and the shade coming from the Rams and the Chargers. Since the rule is 75 miles, why don't they keep heading south and hold future training camps in San Diego once the Costa Mesa contract is up? Nothing against Costa Mesa. Much gratitude to them for agreeing to help bring the Raiders closer to their old stomping grounds for a little while. I think it'll be a little poetic to have the Raiders take over Oakland, L.A. South every summer. I'm sure the 4 remaining Charger fans will get upset, but it'll be great for the OG Raider fans in San Diego, as well as for the recent converts that came to the dark side once the Chargers ditched them. Anyway, just a hopeful idea. Keep up the great work, AAA Raider in the 619. Thanks so much for the text. I appreciate you. And yeah, I think that they're probably working on something. I don't know if Costa Mesa, this Jack Hammett Sports Complex, is going to be a destination location next season. I know Tom Telesco told us in particular he likes fans being there. He likes the energy that the fans bring. So I think that that's ideally what he's going to look for, a place where the Raiders could have as many fans there as they want to, and the fans could enjoy themselves and give all that energy. And I'll say this, side note, I got to give props to the fans that are there. There's only a handful of fans that have been there each and every day, and I've got to meet a few of you, and I do appreciate that. You've been loud. You've been really loud for a small handful of fans. It has been really, really loud. Whenever they start saying Raiders or whatever they're saying, and at times they've switched things up a little bit, they have been super loud. So I just want to give Raider Nation props, the ones that are at the Jack Hammett Sports Complex, being able to observe for training camp. So thanks so much for that. I do appreciate you. Got time for one more call. How about Eli in the 408? He's calling to ask a question about a former Raiders wide receiver and if there'd be any interest in re-signing the guy. Here he is, Eli in the 408. Sorry.
Yo, Q. It's Eli from the 408. Hey, bro. I understand that we got Keelan Doss, right, to fill up that role that Gallup kind of left. I mean, hey, I'm just calling to see, man. What about bringing back? I mean, one of my favorites, Hunter Renfrow. I mean, I feel like he left. It was like a really, really good book. You know what I'm saying? Then you kind of just like lost the book. You're like, dang it! Like I you know what I'm saying? Like it's kind of like I mean, I don't know, man. I don't know if it's maybe my bias. You know what I'm saying? Because the dude was super raw, or I don't know. What do you think about that, man? Like bringing him back. I'm not obviously, you know, this is not going to make him come back, but I'm just saying it's just an idea. But yeah, man, would like to know kind of what you think on that. And also, shout out to my boy, what was it, the GOAT 209 about the Muppet, bringing the Patrick Mahomes Muppet. That was pretty funny. And talk about an unnecessary wildfire. It was literally just a joke. Relax. Oh well. I mean, I guess everybody was bored. But anyways, all right. Appreciate your time, brother. All right. Raiders.
Eli, thanks for the call. Appreciate you. And yeah, I think Hunter Renfrow was really good for what the Raiders needed at the time when Hunter Renfrow was the guy, right? It sucks the way that it ended. I think he was a fan favorite. I know he was a fan favorite. I was a fan of Hunter Renfrow. He just did some really good things, really quiet about his business, but went out there and played really big, right? So everything shook out in a weird way. I don't think that there's any reunion anytime soon. And honestly, I think that that's more to do with the Hunter Renfrow side of things. From my understanding, from the people I've talked to, he only has interest in playing for a couple teams, and I think those are the teams that are closest to his home, like Panthers, Saints, teams in that kind of general vicinity. I think he'd be more open to go and play for teams like that as opposed to come back to Vegas and play for the Raiders. And I just think that was a break that was just needed, right? I mean, even he talked about it after Josh McDaniels got fired, that they're not walking around on eggshells anymore, and that they could just let their hair down and be themselves. But he still didn't do too much afterwards. So it's not like he was getting the ball and being a big factor even after Josh McDaniels was gone. So I just think that the Hunter Renfrow run with the Raiders was cool. And if you see him on the football field again, it'll probably be a team like the Carolina Panthers, like the New Orleans Saints. I'm trying to think, just teams around in that area that could possibly have interest in a wide receiver like Hunter Renfrow. But thanks so much for that call. I do appreciate you. Still got a text from Chico Raider Dave in Denver has a call for us. We'll get that coming up tomorrow. Don't forget, today is the first day of pads, so definitely excited about what we'll see. 10 a.m. is when practice starts. AP will be talking around 9:20 or 9:30. Following practice, I'll have a just quick 1-minute video that I've been doing each and every day and making sure it gets up on YouTube. Ross Jackson and Ari, of course, have done a fantastic job making sure that everything goes the way it does, and then we'll be talking about what we saw from padded practice here on the Locked On Raiders podcast. So until Wednesday, Raider Nation, take care of yourself, take care of your family, love on your family. Most importantly, as always, just win, baby.